Good morning, Joe Winberg, Bluebird Semaphore. We're back on the world history of ordinary people. This will be number 20, and we are going to continue with the East Asia theme, more or less. And since I talked to you last, I came across this fella, Lin Yutang. Lin, L-I-N, next Y-U-T-A-N-G. Lin Yutang. 20th century individual, although I think he was born in the 19th century. But he lived a great deal in the United States. He became a famous writer. I think he made movies from his writings. He's very famous, very well respected and highly thought of individual. This Lin Yutang. So I wrote him down. I got to look him up. Yeah. Who could go to the library to get a book? You know, I think they're taking that right away from us, but that's just a far out thought that I get because, you know, when you know some things about history, you know that that's one of the first things they do when they want to suppress anybody is they get rid of their literature, their books. It happened throughout history. I mean, there's scores of examples of ruling classes wanting to dominate, get people out of the way. They crush their libraries. So, and then they go around and collect whatever books are left and burn them. I mean, just read your history, you know it. So, am I concerned now that this is going on for 6 months that I cannot get into a library? Yes, I'm very concerned. It would seem to me that the spacious halls of libraries can accommodate, say, 10 people at a time visiting those spacious halls and taking out a few books. But no, somebody's got an idea, and I don't know what that idea is, but they certainly have taken away one of the great aspects, one of the great pillars of our country by shutting down the libraries. You know, you could probably go to a library website and do play in the sandbox with the kiddies. Ugh. Anyway, Lin Yutang would have none of it. He wrote many books, and you know what he was talking about. Anyway, we're going to get into the dynasties. I didn't need to go to the library to get this. First of all, much of my reading, you know, I see and hear all the dynasties and what have you, but it's hard to keep that in your head and keep it in order. So today I wrote them down, and I want to present them to you. So in the beginning, say before 2000 BC, there's a people known as the Xia, X-I-A. And pardon me for my pronunciations because I'm not going to go and click on something that speaks back to me. Seems a waste of time. But anyway, so these people are known through legend. And by that, I take it to mean that the scholars and the historians that came after 1600 who are documented historically, they were writing about the Xi. Okay? But that would be legendary. It's not those people writing about themselves. Now, the XIA people are also known as the HSIA people. So you get rid of Asia. You get rid of the H, you put in an A, you get Asia. So that's what I think. But anyway, these people were 2100 BC to 1600 BC. Very important things happened during that time period, but one of them I'll only briefly talk about is that there was a great ruler, a great leader who was able to engineer certain things that minimized the flooding effect of the Yellow River, more than likely around its big bend. The Yellow River has a big bend, very large geographical area, and the river flows south at that point, then east, then back up north, and it's a large geographical bend, and that is considered the epicenter of the Chinese people. And so he figured out how to control those floods, not totally controlled. The Yellow River was creating havoc into the 20th century. It can be a really nasty river, wipe out whole villages. So he did that. Now this is one of the things I really appreciate about certain of the leaders and higher placed individuals in these cultures, is that not only did they come up with, let's stop the flooding, they figured out how to do it. These people put their actions where their words were, and that's why they were revered. Okay? You revere somebody that does something worthwhile, not somebody that sits in a seat and talks all day. That's me. You know who I'm talking about. How can you have any sort of respect or revere people who absolutely don't seem to have any clue as to how to fix the problems of the world? Because A, they're not engineers to begin with. B, they're not scientists to begin with. B, they're just a bunch of political science grads with a couple of law degrees maybe. They couldn't fix their paper bag that had a hole in it, because a person who knows what he was doing would say, I'm not going to fix that bag. I'll come up with another solution. Anyway, don't let me go on and on. So the dynasties, we talked about that first one. It's legendary. Then comes the Shang, 1600 to 1050 before the Common Era, Shang. Then we got one Zhou, Zhou, and also referred to as Chao, Chou, 1046 to 256 BC, and they had this another area, another sub section of this Zhou was known as the Spring and Autumn period. Also during these people, Confucius rose up, and I think he's 760 BC. And also there was something during this time period known as the Warring States, when after a large period of peace, certain of the local kings and what have you started fighting between each other to try to take more of each other's domains. That was the Warring States. The overall Zhou is subdivided into the Western and the Eastern. Then after these folks, those are the time frames, 1076, 771, 771, 256. Qin, or CH''IN, dynasty 221 to 206. Brief, but important things happened then, I'm told. Maybe a lot of things in literature. Which, by the way, I have to confess, early on in these East Asia talks, I said that China has great art, there's no doubt about it. But literature, there's not anything to talk about. Well, I think I probably am seriously wrong there. Because, more recent readings, I see that, literature was way high on their to-do list. They respected it, and they did history after history after history. As a matter of fact, as soon as one dynasty ended, the first thing the next dynasty did was rewrite the history of everything that came before it. So, well-documented Chinese history, no doubt about it. And they went into the other types of literature. They went into poetry, they went into drama, they went into novels eventually. So, I was wrong, and hopefully I'm gonna correct that and learn how to. A great shot to go to the library. How many times I've been in front of the Asian bookshelves, China, and seen What's going on there? Now, hold on a second. I hear a phone. It was nothing. I had to interrupt only because I wouldn't. Only because I am waiting for a service technician to possibly stop by. Anyway, where was I? I think I was talking about literature in China. Yeah. So how many times I've been at a library? I'm looking at the Chinese book. I'm looking at the history of the literature of China. This and that, and the literature. This, some of it being the actual writing of the people. Some of it being a commentary on the writings of China and so on. And I've just said I don't want to read this. This is too. It's not going to get me the information I want. Well, I made a serious mistake there. So, and this is coming from a guy who's always right. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so we talked about. I think we were at the Quin and the Chin. And now we go to the Han, H-A-N, long-standing, 206 before the Common Era BCE to 220 the Common Era CE. So that's about 400 years, 4 centuries. And that's also broken up into the Western, earlier, and the Eastern, the later. From the Han, we go to a period that's referred to as the Sixth Dynastic period, 220 to 589, long period, but they only want to refer to it as the Sixth Dynastic period. After that, you got Su, 581, that's S-U-I, 581 to 618 Common Era. Then you got the Tang, T-A-N-G, 618 to 609 Common Era. Then you have a 5 Dynasty period, 907 to 960. Okay? I don't know why I'm holding this thing up, but you can't read it. Can you read it? Maybe you can. Later on, you can blow it up and see it a little bit and review it. I'll do that once again, slowly. Okay. So, after the Fine Dynasty, you got the Song, S-O-N-G, 960 to 1279. Northern and Southern periods, 960 to 11 something, and 11 something to 12 something. So now you see, approaching 1279, we're starting to get a little closer to centuries that we learn about when we're studying Western civilizations. So a certain amount of excitement should be gathering when we start looking at a date like 1279. And sure enough, the next dynasty is the Yuan, Y-U-A-N, 1279 to 1368. Hardly 100 years. But who was that dynasty? That dynasty was the Mongols, who invaded China and ruled China for that period of time. And in that period of time, well, first of all, Kublai Khan was the emperor, and then some of his grandsons and things, they did it. But eventually they're gone. They're out by 1368. But they started to build a forbidden city. They expanded China's frontiers immensely, way out to the west, way down to the south. They were expansionists, to say the least. These are the Mongols, Kublai Khan. And this is the dynasty that was happening when Marco Polo decided to walk across the continent of Asia. There's a Swedish guy, Sven, last name. He also walked across a great deal of that continent, but he did it in a way that was, I believe, extremely arduous. You know, the Mongols would just get on their 100,000 horses and tear across the steppes and the deserts. And by the way, those Mongols, they would have in tether 2 spare horses. So for each Mongol there'd be 3 horses, and they're riding along, and one gets tired, he uses the other one. Just an immensely well-focused idea. Go ride hard and kill everything in your way. But so we next have we talked about the Five Dynasty, the Song, and then the Yuan. Okay, and the next one is the Ming, 1368 to 1644. This is the period when European creep, and I don't mean creep as a person, but creep as in slow moving, made its intrusion into the Far East, East Asia. And the Asian intellect didn't know what to make of these people. Because first of all, anybody that wasn't a Chinese was a barbarian. Same things with the Japanese. Anybody that wasn't a Japanese was a barbarian. So they didn't know what to do with these people. And I guess they got a little tempted by the trade, and they let some of them in. You know, they could have some things, they would call them factories, where the Dutch or the English or the French could have a shop where they can do trade with the locals and so on. So they let that go along. It was highly monitored. You had to monitor it. But the inhabitants of China and even Japan, finally they got fed up with these people, and one of the things was because the missionaries were all supposed to be Christians. They were all fighting with each other. You had the Jesuits, you had the Dominicans, and I think you had the Franciscans. They were all fighting with each other. And finally, particularly in Japan, they said, you know what, if you people can't get along, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. So Japan definitely kicked them all out. China was a little wishy-washy about that. So anyway, so the Ming opens the door to the European creep. And I don't mean the person, I mean the slow movement. Then the next dynasty is the Qing, Q-I-N-G, also C-H apostrophe I-N-G. And these are your Manchus, who come down from north above Peking, from Manchuria is basically a big block of land above Peking. On the west is Inner Mongolia. On the east would be some of the seaboard of some places like the Sea of Japan and other things. A large block of land. They came down, went right through the wall, and they conquered what was China, and they ruled China until 1912, 1644 to 1912. After that came the Republic period. At the 1912 time frame, and thereabout, plus or minus a few years, Sun Yat-sen, if I'm trying to say that right, was pretty much the leading Chinese person. And he was a distinguished scholar and well-known man around the world. He'd been into every capital. He knew a lot of people, and the Chinese were ready to throw off the mantle of dynasties and emperors, and they put him in. I think it was well known he was going to be there temporarily. The point is, he was replaced by a 6-year-old Chinese, like the son of one of the emperors. No, younger than that. He was 3 years old, and he was made the emperor, and shortly thereafter he abdicated. Okay, and then we get into the Republic period, 1912 to 1949. Now that abdication of that 6-year-old emperor is the theme and the plot of the well-known, well-received movie, The Last Emperor. If you haven't seen it, go see it. This will make a lot more sense to you. But so that's the Republic period, and after the Republic period, what went on there, 1912 to 1949? You had so many world events went on. You had just so much stuff, but certainly, Mao Zedong was fighting with Chiang Kai-shek. Those people were at each other's odds. Finally, Mao saw the writing on the wall, and he grabbed 100,000 of his people, and they did the Long March. They went inland, west, 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 west. Then they went north, 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 and then they came back east again, and they settled in an area over there. Now, very arduous journey, and through some of the roughest terrain on earth, but they did it. Now, so there's a lot we could talk about that period from 1912 to 1949. A lot. And we will talk about it at some point. But also then followed, in 1949, the People's Republic of China, 1949 to the present. And, no matter what they may have said for propaganda, their original attempts at making a viable, livable country failed miserably. Starvation, revolution, all this stuff, revolts, just terrible. And that went on, quite frankly, almost to the end of the 20th century. And eventually, probably 1980 anyway, they saw the writing on the wall and quietly readjusted their goals. And some of the things that they would now allow would be a type of capitalism and a little more freedom, put the family back in place, put the small farmer back and restored, and so on. Not that people were dying to be small farmers, but they would prefer to be their own small farmer than some serf-like peasant tied to a state farm, where they would work 17, 18 hours a day, go to sleep and get back up and do it all over again. You can't tell people that, do this and everything is going to be right. No, by the second day, they're going to want to revolt. Anyway, that's the dynasties. Oh, and I want to tell you, yesterday we went up to Hamilton. Hamilton is like the blueberry capital of the universe. So we went up there. We went up there to go to an Italian market that is renowned in South Jersey, Bagliani's. And we got some wonderful stuff. And I'm getting to where I go there more frequently. It's an hour's drive. But shopping at these conventional supermarkets, they just don't provide the quality and the just the overall mix, variety that one would want if one is really looking for Italian food. Now you could go to the Italian market in Philly, but then I got to add like almost another out to that trip, which is nice. I like to go there at least once a year. The Italian market in Philly. I like to do that. But anyway, so we're up there for Bagliani's, and there's an antique market there. And as you know, my wife is heavily into antiques. And I found this. I found two things, actually. So I found this plate. See that? And what attracted me was its oriental orientation. Well, I like that. Another play on words. Oriental orientation. And it was way down on the bottom. Nobody would ever even see it. I saw it. It was nice and clean, so it did stand out, but very unlikely anybody would see it. I took it and I picked it up, and on the back, there's this. So, I was like flipped over backwards about it. Now, an examination of the characters, I'm pretty sure it's Korean. There's a lot of circles in it, and I'm pretty sure it's Korean. And what is it? It was probably a presentation plate. some merchant reached his quota, and he got this. So we found out there, and I took it, bang. I said, boy, I'm going to put that up on Bluebird. Let people see that. And then somewhere in a dark, dusty corner, my wife spotted this. And she brought it to me and said, do you want it? I said, yeah. Well, I looked at it first, and a little bit of damage over here. There is a little bit of damage. There's a little bit of damage here. And probably he was holding something. I suspect. I have no idea what he was holding. But I thought at first that it might be an oar. He was some kind of an oarsman. Hey, because I see a fish over here. What I think is a fish. Right in this area. So I'm going to keep this now just as it is. I will not be putting any stain on it or any shiny stuff. It'll say just as it is. And I will keep it. I have a lot of Oriental-based things. Maybe someday I could show you them all. You know? All right. Now, was there anything else I wanted to say before I sign off for today? I don't think so. But thank you for listening, and pray that the libraries will reopen. I mean, if you're Catholic, maybe you could say a novena, a special novena. Have a mass said. Maybe there's a patron saint of the libraries. You know what? There probably is. I have a book upstairs, all 500 or 1,000 saints. I'm going to find that saint. First of all, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, whoever that saint is. And then I'll apologize, and then I'll pray to them. Please open the freaking libraries. Thank you. See you next time on Bluebird.